I give you the first leader of the NDP after the founding convention, lifelong friend of Stanley's, the delightful man who said I was only half right when I said that he was the wit of the party. Tommy.
Chairman Walter, head table guests, our honored guest, Stanley Knowles, friends of Stanley and friends of the New Democratic Party. May I first of all say how delighted my wife Irma and I are to be here tonight. And even more delighted to see how many of you have turned out to pay tribute to one of our oldest friends. Our friendship with Stanley Knowles goes back many, many years. He and I were in the same class in university. He was at the top and I was at the bottom. I won all the victories of being president of the class, president of the debating society, president of the athletic society. Stanley won all the scholarships that had money attached to them. So my friendship with him, Irma and mine, goes back to the middle 1920s. And we both graduated together in the year 1930. Irma and I got married in 1930, and Baptist churches couldn't afford to give you a holiday, so Stanley, who was my closest friend, came and filled in for me so that Irma and I could go on a honeymoon. And when we came back at the end of the honeymoon, here was most of the congregation on the platform with Stanley at their head to give us a warm reception back to Weyburn. And throughout the years, we kept in touch with each other. Both became interested in the formation of a new party. In 1900, first in Saskatchewan, the Farmer Labor Party in 32, National Party of the CCF in 1933. Both knew that we were going to throw in our lot with this new party because in our student days at university and in our correspondence, we had dreamed of the day that there would be a genuine social democratic movement in Canada. And so when we came close to election time, I had already run in the provincial election in Saskatchewan for the Farmer Labor Party and was defeated by a large and enthusiastic majority. And the federal election was coming up in 1935, and Irma and I already had plans that I was going to go to Chicago University and do some more work on a doctor's degree and a PhD. And Stanley wrote me and he said, "Are you going to run? I hope you're going to run in this federal election that's coming up." And I wrote back and said, no, I have no intention of it. I've done my stint. And he said, "Well, they're after me to run. It's a lot tougher territory than you've got. I'll tell you what I'll do. If you'll run, I'll run." I said, "You got yourself a deal, boy." He ran, didn't get elected. I think he made 2 more tries at it. I was fortunate in 35 to get elected with a narrow majority of 301 votes. I've never found who that one was, but I think he went into hiding. And Irma and I came down here to Ottawa at our first session. And through the years, we kept in touch with each other. Stanley ran the next federal election. When Mr. Woodsworth died, it was apparent to everyone, in the constituency and outside of it, there was only one person who could possibly hope to take his place and to fill the great vacancy which he had left. And that person was Stanley Knowles. And he ran there, and as you know, was elected in the by-election. And I had the privilege of being here when he came down in 1942 to join the caucus. And from that day on, we have worked closely together. I left, of course, and to go back to Saskatchewan, where we formed the government, as you know, in 1900 and 1944, and that government was in office for some 20 years. I came back to Ottawa, as you know, after the formation of the new Democratic Party, and had the privilege of being the national leader, the first national leader of that new Democratic Party. And so Stanley and I were once again reunited, working together in the House of Commons, as we had been before, and as we had been even when we were many miles apart. And I want to pay tribute tonight to the work which he has done over the years. I suppose for a couple of old guys that have been at it all this long time, you know, we ought to be thinking it's time to quit. Well, I've already quit as an elected member, but I seem to be running around making more speeches now than I made before. I'm the only one whom they can get for nothing. And the only one whose wife will trust them so far from home.
That's what you think.
Somebody says, that's what I think. It's like the fellow who used to be on the roads as a commercial traveler. He always got home on Friday nights. Once he came home on Thursday night and found the next door neighbor with his wife. And there was a terrific row. He beat him up. And one of the other neighbors said to another, "Well, it could have been worse." He said, "What do you mean it could have been worse?" He said, "I could have come on Wednesday night." Well, Stanley and I are getting to the age when we're at the tail end, and we love to come here and see you young people carrying on and assuming the responsibilities of keeping the Social Democratic Party active and growing. I want to charge you with a responsibility which is yours now. To say to you tonight that all the flowery accolades that we've handed to Stanley Knowles, they're well deserved. To have real meaning, have to be backed up by concrete actions. And the greatest tribute you can pay to Stanley Knowles is to dedicate your lives to implementing the things for which he worked and for which he strove. That's the task that faces That's the task that faces our movement at this time. And don't let anyone tell you, that the NDP is being shunted aside, that it doesn't really count. If there was ever a time that this country needed the new Democratic Party, if there was ever a time that this country needed the principles of democratic socialism put into practice, it's now in this year 1984. Look at the picture in Canada. Like Stanley Knowles and a few of you old-timers, I lived through the Depression of the 1930s. We thought it was terrible. We did everything we could to protest. That's how the CCF came to be formed. And what was the situation then? 1 million unemployed. Today there are 1.5 million unemployed. 500,000 of them young people. The percentage of young people unemployed is going up faster than any other group in this country. Unemployment now in the neighborhood of 12%. That's to say nothing of those who aren't registered as unemployed. The unemployment situation in this country is a disgrace to a so-called Christian civilized country. Don't talk to me about needing an issue. The two old line parties are arguing about everything except how to put people to work. They're arguing about everything except how we take this economy and make it serve the people. Your job and mine is to go out and rouse the righteous indignation of the Canadian people and say that in a country which has more resources in relation to its population than any other part of the world, in a country which has vast resources to be developed, has a highly trained working population, has people with a high level of intelligence, that in this country unemployment is absolutely inexcusable. We've got issues. We're the people who fought for Medicare. I had the privilege in Saskatchewan of bringing in the first Medicare legislation in North America. That legislation today doesn't mean the job is finished. First of all, the three provinces, the three richest provinces in Canada today, in which Medicare is not universal. Unless you can pay your per capita tax, unless you can pay certain taxes, you're not eligible. Medicare, if it means anything, means that every person in the country is entitled to all the health care they need, irrespective of whether they're rich or poor, irrespective of whether they can pay taxes or can't pay taxes. That's Medicare, and we haven't got it. Don't tell me we need an issue. We live in a world that is drifting into a war to end all wars. Men like Stanley Knowles, myself, have lived to see 2 wars. Those wars left large parts of the world devastated. I want to tell you that whether we realize it or not, the world has changed. Technology has changed our civilization. In another war, there will be no armies, no navies, no air force. 2 or 3 days of throwing nuclear missiles into an enemy's territory will leave that territory a wasteland. What is even worse, as the nuclear waves spread, other parts of the world will become a wasteland. Mr. Wordsworth said many years ago that the last century made the world a neighborhood. This century, the 20th century, we wanted to make it a brotherhood. I'm saying to you tonight, in the next century, a war will make our world a great cemetery. A nuclear war could destroy human life on this planet. And our so-called politicians sit around talking about having another treaty and having another meeting, when there's only one answer now. You young people have to make it heard from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The only answer now is we must have no nuclear weapons. There must be no cruise missiles on Canadian soil or anywhere else where the people have the courage to say, we will have them no more. You and I tonight are honoring a great man. In addition, my wife Irma and I are honoring an old and very dear friend. I would like to see us use this occasion for deciding that each and all of us will rededicate ourselves to the things that Stanley Knowles has fought for and worked for. Rededicate ourselves to building a democratic socialist society in Canada and eventually throughout the world. Clear the way, then, clear the way. Blind creeds and kings have had their day. Move the dead branches from out the path. Our hope is in the aftermath. Our hope is in heroic men, star-led to build the world again. To this event, all ages ran. Make way for brotherhood. Make way for man. Thank you.